What is supply chain management? What is a supply chain? A supply chain is a global network used to deliver products and services from raw materials to end customers through an engineered flow of information, physical distribution, and cash. This figure illustrates a very basic supply chain with three entities: a producer with one supplier and one customer. Four basic flows connect the supply chain entities together. The flow of physical materials and services from suppliers through the intermediate entities that transform them into consumable items for distribution to the final customer. The flow of cash from the customer back upstream toward the raw material supplier. The flow of information back and forth along the chain. And the reverse flow of products returned for repairs, recycling, or disposal. The simplified chain in this figure might be made up of these organizations: a supplier, a provider of goods or services, or a seller with whom the buyer does business, as opposed to a vendor, which is a generic term referring to all sellers in the marketplace. The supplier provides materials, energy, services, or components for use in producing a product or service. These could include items as diverse as sugarcane, fruit, industrial metals, electric wiring, fabric, or transportation services. A producer that receives services, materials, supplies, energy, and components to use in creating finished products, such as dress shirts, packaged dinners, airplanes, electric power, or guided tour. A customer that receives shipments of finished products to deliver to its customers who wear the shirts, eat the packaged dinners, fly the planes, or turn on the lights. There are three main types of supply chain strategies: stable, reactive, and efficient reactive. The stable supply chain strategy is appropriate for chains that are focused on execution, efficiencies, and cost performance, that use simple connectivity technologies and have little need for real-time information. An example is a table salt manufacturer with commodity-oriented processes that use scale production and dedicated capital assets. A reactive supply chain strategy works well when the chain acts to fulfill demand from trade partners' sales and marketing strategies. An example of this strategy is a manufacturer of sports team apparel for the fans of competing rivals in the World Championship soccer tournament. When a team makes it to the next round, more products are needed. However, for the losing team, demand virtually disappears for their apparel. With an efficient reactive supply chain strategy, the chain focuses efficiency and cost management on the total delivered cost of finished goods. An example of this strategy is the supermarket chains in the Netherlands, where the shops, distribution centers, third-party logistics providers, and manufacturers cooperated to replace what is sold in the shops within less than 24 hours. As per previous discussed, there are four flows in supply chain. Information flow includes invoices, sales literature, specifications, receipts, orders, rules and regulations, etc. Primary cash flow includes payments for products, supplies, etc. Primary product flow includes material, components, supplies, services, energy, finished products, etc. And reverse product flow includes returns for repair, replacement, recycling, disposal, etc. Consider, as a very simplified instance of this stripped-down supply chain model, a baker who sells a variety of cakes. This simple baker represents one end of a supply chain. The supplier is probably a small wholesale food distributor that sells basic ingredients to many one or two persons food kiosks. The baker is the producer who turns the raw ingredients into a variety of cakes. The bakery operated by one or two owners is the retailer that sells the finished delicacies to the customers or passerby who are cajoled into making a purchase. Manufacturing supply chain model. This figure at least hints at the organizational complexity that appears in corporate supply chains by adding a second tier of suppliers and more distribution centers and customers. Notice that there are suppliers of services as well as materials. Discussions of supply chains typically put manufacturing at the center and suppliers of components to the immediate left. The exhibit also shows that Tier 1 suppliers have their own suppliers in Tier 2. The wholesale food distributor that supplies the daily ingredients and raw materials for the menu items has its material and service suppliers, and they have their suppliers, and so forth. The flour for the crepes, for instance, is not a raw material but a product with its own supply chain that begins in a farmer's wheat field and is processed in a plant, shipped to a wholesaler, and distributed to the corner store. No matter how far you travel toward the left, you will never run out of new tiers of suppliers. Although the traditional supply chain model was developed in manufacturing, the service industry, too, has supply chains. A firm in the service industry is, in its narrowest sense, an organization that provides an intangible product, such as medical or legal advice. In its broadest sense, service industries include all organizations except farming, mining, and manufacturing. It includes retail trade, wholesale trade, transportation and utilities, finance, insurance and real estate, construction, professional, personal and social services, and local, state and federal governments. Exhibit illustrates in simple form the supply chain of an electric utility. It receives products, services, and supplies of its own, and dispenses its services into 3 distribution channels: home customers, commercial customers, and other utilities. In this discussion of supply chain processes, we will describe one of the more widely accepted and used process-oriented models, the supply chain operations reference model. The SCORE model is a process reference model developed and endorsed by a non-profit corporation, the Supply Chain Council, as the cross-industry standard diagnostic tool for supply chain management. The Supply Chain Council carefully defines the boundaries within which the SCORE process model applies. Specifically, it does not apply to all business processes, only to those involved in the supply chain, as the chain extends 2 tiers in both directions from the company at the core. At the center is your organization. To the immediate right is the first tier of customers, which can be either internal or external. To the left is the first tier of suppliers, which, again, can be either internal or external. The model goes out 2 tiers in both directions. The second tier suppliers and customers are assumed to be external. The main focus of the model is on the chain's management processes: plan, source, make, deliver, and return. These processes, which are not traditional functional areas or departments, exist within the member firms of the chain. The members at each end of the chain, a raw material supplier and a retail outlet, for example, perform only 2 processes. The supplier's supplier handles only delivery and returns, while the customer's customer manages only sourcing and returns. This model can also be applied to supply chains containing many more linked firms. Firms have generally pursued one of two types of supply chain management, called vertical integration and lateral or horizontal integration. Vertical integration, or vertical supply chain management, refers to the practice of bringing the supply chain inside one organization. For instance, in the early days of the American automotive industry, Henry Ford pursued a strategy of owning and controlling as many links in the automobile supply chain as possible. While this vertical structure still persists in some companies, it is very challenging to be fully integrated end to end. Now, lateral supply chain management has replaced vertical integration as the favored approach to managing the myriad activities in the supply chain. The lateral or horizontal approach is assumed in most supply chain illustrations, including the ones featured so far. We usually assume that the customer-producer-supplier illustrations refer to three separate companies. This is, of course, not necessarily the case. The entities could be departments within one company, a supplier of tires in one department, an assembler of finished automobiles in another, the assembly line, and a wholly owned dealership at the customer end. Horizontal chains are now the way of the world and, therefore, the major focus of supply chain theory and application. A vertically integrated enterprise may grow from an entrepreneurial base by adding departments and layers of management to accommodate expansion, or it may be built through mergers and acquisitions. In an attempt to create a self-sufficient enterprise, Ford owned iron ore mines, steel mills, and a fleet of ships, as well as the manufacturing plants and showrooms that built and distributed the cars bearing his name. The primary benefit of vertical integration is control. A department or wholly owned subsidiary, with no independent presence in the marketplace, can't deal with competitors to sell its components or services at a higher price. Its operations are completely visible to the parent company and can be synchronized with other company functions by directives from the top. Its schedules, workforce policies, locations, amounts produced, all aspects of its business are controlled by the overarching management. Lateral integration. When corporate ownership turns instead to outsourcing various activities, it loses control of these aspects of the supply chain and will deal separately with members of the chain as suppliers or customers. Each of them will focus on their core competencies, such as extraction or production, and deal with each other through discrete transactions or by longer-term contracts. Exhibit hints at the complexity of a multi-tiered chain. As you can see, horizontal does not quite capture the complexity of the global supply network, with multiple connections around the world, and information shared on networks connected all along the chain. Among the reasons for relying on a lateral supply chain, the following stand out. To achieve economies of scale and scope. No matter how large the corporation is, internal supply chain functions lack economies of scale when compared with the potential capacity of an independent provider of the same product or service. To improve business focus and expertise. The independent company that focuses entirely on its particular business can develop more expertise than an in-house department, leading to more attractive pricing, higher quality, or both. To leverage communication and production competencies. Information can be shared simultaneously by video conference or in internal organization web boards or chat rooms. There are advantages to using already established companies that know their local markets. Stages of supply chain management evolution. Experts in the field agree that there are typically between 4 or 5 sequential stages. Stage 1. Multiple dysfunction. The potential or nucleus firm lacks clear internal definitions and goals and has no external links other than transactional ones. Stage 2. Semi-functional enterprise. The nucleus firm undertakes initiatives to improve effectiveness, efficiency, and quality within functional areas. Stage 3. Integrated enterprise. The firm breaks down silo walls and brings functional areas together in processes such as sales and operations planning, with a focus on company-wide processes rather than individual functions. Stage 4. Extended enterprise. The firm integrates its internal network with the internal networks of selected supply chain partners to improve efficiency, product or service quality, or both. Stage 1. Multiple dysfunction. It is possible for the nucleus firm in a lateral supply chain to lack any disciplined management for both its internal and external chains. Exhibit illustrates the lack of coordinated flows of information or solid relationships among potential partners. Stage 2. Semi-functional enterprise. Exhibit provides an illustration of the semi-functional enterprise. Information flow has been improved, and functional areas have been defined, but they tend to perform their functions one after the other, without collaborating on the most effective ways of creating value. At this stage, there are no partnerships with customers and suppliers. Stage 3. Integrated enterprise. In the third stage of supply chain evolution, the individual firm begins to focus on business processes rather than compartmentalized functions. Exhibit provides a visual representation of a linked internal supply chain, with collaboration between functions and sharing of information through company-wide enterprise resources planning software. Enterprise resource planning extends that process by adding modules for each functional area until the most advanced versions tie together entire companies. Further advances have reached through the corporate wall to tie supply chain partners together. Stage 4. Extended enterprise. The hallmark of this stage is the decision to extend at least one business process beyond the boundary of the individual corporation. When the nucleus firm decides to collaborate on planning, design, replenishment, logistics, or another business process with one of its suppliers or customers, the barrier to developing the extended enterprise from end to end of the supply chain integration has been overcome. Exhibit shows how the supply chain has changed. Now that everyone has the same understanding of supply chain management, let's look at its objectives. Objective number 1. Add value for customers and stakeholders. Supply chain management, like any other type of business management, aims to create value through financial benefits, match the values of its various customers, and appeal to the social values of its customers, stakeholders, and community. Value broadly defines as the worth of an item, good, or service. Adding value to a good or service is the responsibility of each entity and process in the supply chain. The second overarching goal of supply chain management is to improve customer service. In terms of supply chains, customer service is the ability of a company to address the needs, inquiries, and requests from customers. It can also be explained as a measure of the delivery of a product to the customer at the time specified. The strategy will include the fundamental attributes of basic customer service: availability, operational performance, and customer satisfaction. Availability is the ability to have the product when it is wanted by a customer. Operational performance deals with the time needed to deliver a customer order. And customer satisfaction takes into account customer perceptions, expectations, and opinions based on the customer's experience and knowledge. Objective number 3. For a supply chain to be effective in its use of resources, it must be using them in a manner that helps the organization achieve its business objectives. Resources can be in the form of employees, raw materials, equipment, etc. Being effective means that the supply chain gets the right product and the right amount to the right customer at the right time. They are often trade-offs between effectiveness and efficiency, as illustrated in this figure. Objective number 4. Efficiently use system-wide resources. As shown in figure, efficiency is typically weighed against effectiveness. Efficiency is defined as a measurement, usually expressed as a percentage of the actual output compared to the standard output expected. It measures how well something is performing relative to existing standards. Efficiency is inward-focused in that a company looks internally to determine how a supply chain process can be done less expensively, in less time and with fewer resources. Efficiency is one of the measures of capacity in a supply chain environment. Capacity is all about what can be accomplished by employing all the resources in the supply chain network. Objective number 5. Supply chain management enables an organization to leverage the strengths of its partners. A partnership in a supply chain is a relationship based on trust, shared risk, and rewards aimed toward achieving a competitive advantage. A strong and useful partnership will yield a combination of the following as it performs the functions needed by your organization. Adding value to products, such as shorter time to market. Improving market access, such as providing new market channels. Building financial strength through increased income and shared costs. Adding technological strength if there is internal expertise in use of more advanced software and systems. Strengthening operations by lowering system costs and cycle times. Enhancing strategic growth to break through barriers to new industry and opportunities. Improving organizational skills that facilitate shared learning and insights of both firms' management and employees. The 3 V's of supply chain management: visibility, velocity, and variability are key elements of successful supply chain strategy. No matter what the specific competitive priority, the goal of supply chain management is to increase visibility and velocity while reducing variability, as seen in figure. Visibility is the ability to view important information throughout a facility or supply chain, no matter where in the facility or supply chain the information is located. Increased visibility along the supply chain is a benefit for supply chain partners and the end customer. With better visibility, a supply chain manager or employee can see the results of activities occurring in the chain and is made aware of minor, incremental changes via technological processes. Velocity is a term used to indicate the relative speed of all the transactions collectively within a supply chain community. A maximum velocity is most desirable because it indicates a higher asset turnover for stockholders and faster order-to-delivery response for customers. Velocity, like visibility, is enhanced by supply chain management. Speeding up the flow of demand and cash, as well as the velocity of inventory, is one of the methods of increasing the velocity of transactions along the supply chain. Variability is the natural tendency of the results of all business activities to variability fluctuate above and below an average value, such as fluctuations around average time to completion, average number of defects, average daily sales, or average production yields. Unlike visibility and velocity, variability decreases with good supply chain management. Supply chain management works to reduce variability in both supply and demand as much as possible. Academy for International Modern Studies is a UK-based globally recognised institution in supply chain management studies. AIMS offers following programs through interactive learning. Certified Supply Chain Expert. Master Diploma in Supply Chain. MBA in Supply Chain Management. For details, please visit aims.education.